Nukin dashes investor dreams of quick Fannie-Freddie windfall. In a June 8 interview, Nukin was adamant that the Trump administration won't just let Fannie and Freddie build up their capital buffers and then release the companies. He also said, "What we're not going to do is business as usual with no changes, just recapitalize them and float them," said Nukin, referring to a possible public offering of Fannie and Freddie shares. There needs to be how. The comments would seem to push back a process known as recap and release, which would consist of bolstering Fannie and Freddie's ability to absorb losses and then returning them to exclusively private shareholder ownership. Hedge funds have. Nukin's remarks also underscore that despite the administration's determination, solving the biggest outstanding issue from the 2008 financial crisis is easier said than done. The companies were seized by regulators and bailed out by taxpayers during the housing market collapse, ultimately getting $191.5 billion in aid. They have returned to President Donald Trump has ordered the Treasury Department to come up with a proposal for ending the Fannie and Freddie conservatorship, and that plan could be released within weeks, people familiar with the matter have said. While Fannie and Freddie don't make loans, they are crucial to keeping the nation's housing finance system humming. That's because Nukin, during the interview along the sidelines of a finance ministers' summit in Japan, added that he would prefer an explicit government backstop of Fannie and Freddie securities. That would make the debt. Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Mark Calabria, Fannie and Freddie's independent regulator, has said that such a guarantee is not a prerequisite for the companies to be freed. But Treasury and Stephanie Johnson, an FHFA spokeswoman, declined to comment. "It is as if Nukin is the good cop and Calabria is the bad cop," said Ed Mills, policy analyst at Raymond James & Associates Incorporated. "It's clearly lawmakers have failed for more than a decade to agree to an overhaul of Fannie and Freddie. While they are now one of the biggest questions about Fannie and Freddie's potential exit from conservatorship is how they would raise enough capital to withstand a financial calamity, which both Nukin and Calabria have said is a precondition to the companies being released. Regulators have while Calabria has said that he thinks a public offering of Fannie and Freddie shares will likely be necessary, Nukin suggested in the interview that private money could also be used. Could be IPO, could be private capital, there are lots of ways of doing it, but ultimately it would need a combination of retention and capital raise, he said. A stock sale would not only likely be the largest in history, but also one of the most complex, considering the conservatorship and because Treasury owns nearly 80% of Fannie and Freddie's senior preferred shares. Raymond James Mill.
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park.